They became involved with another person, not because you lacked value, not because you were easy to forget, but because something within them was not ready to face something truly real. And now, they carry a message they can no longer avoid or keep buried inside themselves. What they want to express is not simple. And it is not comfortable either, because while they were physically beside someone else, emotionally a part of them never completely walked away from you. And that truth has now become too strong for them to deny any longer. Have you ever felt like a connection never actually ended? Even when everything on the outside appeared finished, something still remained incomplete and quietly alive in the background of your thoughts the entire time. That is where they have been existing, not fully in the past, but in a place where truth was delayed instead of completely erased. Because genuine connection does not simply disappear. It waits quietly and remains present, and eventually it asks to be seen honestly without confusion. If you want the full truth about why they returned with this urgent message after being with someone else, hit like right now. They chose what felt comfortable instead of what felt deeply true to them at that time. They moved toward what felt familiar instead of what was silently calling them from deep within with real intensity. And they held on to what was easier to avoid instead of what could have transformed them in a deep and lasting way. By doing this, they convinced themselves that comfort meant peace. Even though something inside kept questioning that choice, they stayed where things felt predictable, where emotions were not too demanding, and where they could stay in control without much difficulty. But deep inside there was always a quiet awareness that something more meaningful had been left behind, something that required more courage than they were ready to offer at that stage of their life. And once that understanding started settling inside them, it did not disappear softly or fade with time. It stayed with them during the moments they could not escape from or distract themselves away from. It appeared during quiet nights, in the pauses between conversations, and in the spaces where their thoughts became louder than everything around them. The feeling did not beg for attention, but it refused to be ignored. It remained there in a calm and steady way, reminding them that something inside had remained unresolved for too long. No matter how much they tried to move ahead, this awareness stayed behind their actions, quietly influencing how they felt about everything around them. In the silence between conversations and in the repetition of days that slowly started blending together, they began noticing how little life was truly asking from them. Everything felt manageable but also empty in a way, as if growth had slowly been replaced by routine. They began seeing how much of their true self they had hidden away just to keep life simple and easy to manage without emotional challenge. They avoided deeper questions, avoided intense emotions, and avoided situations that could challenge who they really were inside. Over time, this created distance within themselves, a feeling that they were present in their own life but not fully connected to it. And that quiet distance slowly became impossible to ignore any longer. What they had with the other person may have looked stable from the outside, but it did not hold the same depth, meaning, or emotional weight. What they shared with you carried something different, something that reached deeper and remained longer inside their heart. And things that truly matter do not disappear just because someone walks away from them for some time. They stay quietly in the background of the mind, waiting to be acknowledged without force. They do not demand attention, but they also do not fade away. As time passes, those emotions begin to rise again, not in dramatic ways, but through subtle and constant reminders that something meaningful once existed between you. At some point, they stopped lying to themselves. Not through one sudden realization, and not through a dramatic moment of clarity, but slowly and honestly in a way that felt uncomfortable and real at the same time. They admitted that they were never fully alive in the place they decided to remain in during that period. Something important had always been missing, even if they tried not to notice it clearly before. They realized that no matter how much they tried convincing themselves they had moved on, a part of them was still emotionally unfinished with you. This understanding did not arrive easily. It came with a quiet honesty that forced them to look at their own choices without excuses or avoidance. Comment still here. If you have ever felt like a connection never truly ended, even when they were with another person, they eventually understood that they never truly gave that connection a fair opportunity in the past. Not because it lacked meaning or importance, but because it demanded courage from them. It required a level of openness they were not prepared for at that point in their journey. The kind of courage that asks someone to appear without emotional protection, to face the possibility of rejection, to allow themselves to feel deeply without knowing what the outcome would be. It meant risking pain, risking transformation, and risking becoming a different version of themselves because of what they felt inside. Instead of stepping into that space, they walked away from it, choosing safety over growth during that time. Even though a part of them understood what they were leaving behind, now that awareness carries a message they could not express before. It is not perfect. It is not carefully arranged, and it is not asking for sympathy from anyone. It simply exists as a calm and steady truth inside them that they can no longer ignore. They understand now, and they see what you represented in their life with clearer eyes. They recognize that what they were truly avoiding was never really you, but the parts of themselves they were not ready to face honestly. And that realization changes something deep inside them in a lasting way. It changes how they view their past, their choices, and their understanding of what truly mattered most. It is not a loud transformation, but it is permanent. Because once a person clearly sees their own avoidance, they cannot pretend not to see it anymore. They cannot go back to acting like nothing happened, or that it never mattered. Whether they choose to reach out or stay silent, something inside them has already shifted permanently. The illusion they were living in has completely broken apart, and that collapse brings both discomfort and clarity into their mind. It forces them to sit with the truth of what they avoided and to carry the emotional weight that comes with that realization every single day. There is no simple way to escape it once it becomes clear within their thoughts. What you need to remember more than anything is this truth. None of this was ever a reflection of your worth or your value as a person. It was always a reflection of their emotional readiness and their ability to face what they truly felt during that time. Type yes if you want me to reveal the real reason they could never fully leave you emotionally. You were never replaced by someone better. You simply met someone who did not yet have the emotional capacity to meet you where you stood. And now they are standing inside the consequences of their own choices, carrying the weight of everything they avoided, delayed, and left unresolved. Whether they speak about it openly or not, that is the true impact they now live with. Not a dramatic return, not an instant confession, but the truth slowly settling into their awareness day after day. You were real, and real connections leave marks that cannot be erased by convenience, distraction, or emotional avoidance. They want you to understand that their decisions were never about your value, but about their own fear and emotional readiness back then. The hesitation, the distance, and the inconsistency all came from fear, not from a lack of understanding about what you meant to them. And now that fear has finally been faced, it has left them more aware, more honest, and more conscious of the consequences of how they handled something that truly mattered deeply to them. They now carry a clarity that feels heavy, undeniable, and impossible to soften with excuses or simple explanations any longer. In that clarity, they can now clearly see what they ignored, what they delayed, and what can no longer be changed easily. They see the impact their silence, inconsistency, and avoidance had on someone who truly deserved full presence, honesty, and genuine effort from them. This awareness does not arrive with comfort. It comes with a steady understanding that stays with them quietly. It does not disappear quickly or rush away with time. Instead, it remains inside them, growing clearer with every passing day, reminding them of what was real, what was avoided, and what they can no longer run away from inside themselves. They keep remembering every time they chose emotional distance instead of honesty and silence, instead of truth in the past. This is not a request for things to go back to the way they once were. It is not a plea for another opportunity or a sudden attempt to reconnect right now. It is simply a quiet realization that came after deep reflection and emotional growth on their side. They finally understand the courage you showed by being emotionally open, by asking for clarity, and by refusing to settle for confusion, mixed signals, or half-hearted effort from them. And with that understanding comes both admiration and regret, living together inside them. Admiration for your honesty and emotional strength, and regret for not having the courage to meet you with the same openness when it truly mattered most. That regret is not dramatic or obvious from the outside. It is silent, personal, and always sitting beneath the surface of their thoughts. It appears late at night when everything becomes quiet, in moments where distractions disappear, and in memories they try to ignore but cannot fully escape from. It keeps reminding them of the opportunities they allowed to slip away, the honesty they avoided, and the connection they failed to protect when they still had the chance. This feeling does not demand attention loudly, but it also never completely fades from their mind. It stays there quietly, shaping the way they now look at their past and the choices they made during that period of life. What they want you to understand most deeply is that this goes far beyond comfort or familiarity. It reaches much deeper within them. It is about finally realizing what a genuine emotional connection truly feels like, and understanding that something real cannot simply be replaced, forgotten, or ignored without consequence. In every choice they made, there was still a hidden part of them that remained aware of you the entire time, aware of the truth they were too afraid to say aloud. That awareness never disappeared fully. Instead, it became stronger over time, slowly turning into a level of clarity they can no longer avoid or deny within themselves. They are not asking you for forgiveness, and they are not trying to pressure you into any decision. They are only expressing the truth of what they now understand, something they could not fully admit before. This is their truth, shared quietly and honestly, without exaggeration or performance. It comes from someone who finally recognizes what stood in front of them all along, and who now carries that realization with full responsibility. There is no attempt to change the story of the past or make it appear different than it truly was. Share this with someone who is still searching for clarity from a person who once chose emotional safety instead of truth. There is only an effort to finally admit what was real and what that connection genuinely meant to them. This message is not about changing the past. It is about accepting it fully without running from it anymore. They are no longer avoiding the emotions they spent so long trying to escape from. They are no longer splitting their attention or hiding behind silence, distance, or distractions like before. They have faced their fear, their hesitation, and their discomfort with vulnerability honestly within themselves. Through that inner process, they have realized something undeniable. The person they struggled to fully show up for was always you. And that truth now carries a strong emotional weight that they cannot ignore anymore. That understanding has completely changed the way they now view emotional connection, honesty, and emotional presence in life. They are more aware now. Even if the past cannot be rewritten, even if they never act on these emotions, the understanding they now hold will remain with them because they finally see you clearly, not as an option, not as something temporary or replaceable, but as a meaningful connection they were emotionally unprepared for at that time. That truth stays inside them, influencing their thoughts and following them into future experiences whenever emotional depth appears again in their life. What happens next is no longer guided by confusion or emotional uncertainty for them. It becomes about conscious decisions, your clarity, your self-respect, and your ability to remain grounded in your own truth moving forward. Take a quiet moment and truly sit with this. Let yourself feel the weight of everything that has happened and everything that may still unfold ahead in your journey. Trust your instincts, your inner voice, and the emotional strength you have developed over time through your own experiences. Deep inside, you already know what feels right for you. You already know what you deserve emotionally. And now, with awareness of both their growth and your own personal growth, the next step can finally be taken with calmness, confidence, clarity, and steady self-respect. On the outside, someone may appear fully focused somewhere else or completely committed to another direction in life. But emotionally and psychologically, a part of them can still remain attached to something they never fully understood, resolved, or emotionally completed in the past. This is not simply about betrayal. It is about the complicated and deeply human nature of emotional attachment, fear, avoidance, and personal growth that develops slowly over time. What makes situations like this so powerful is the role fear quietly plays in shaping decisions people often do not fully understand while they are making them. Fear influences human choices more than most people realize. Fear of intimacy, fear of emotional vulnerability, fear of losing control, and even fear of facing one's own emotional truth can cause someone to avoid what they truly feel inside. During those moments, they may move toward other connections, not because of deep love, but because those situations feel safer, easier, or less emotionally intense. At the same time, the person they shared a deep connection with continues to remain present in their thoughts. Even if they never openly admit it to others, that presence continues through memories, quiet comparisons, and unspoken emotions that stay with them internally. It shapes their emotional world in ways that are not always visible from the outside, but are strongly felt deep within them. Regret becomes an important part of this process when someone delays emotional honesty or avoids a meaningful connection. Eventually, they begin to experience the emotional consequences of that avoidance. This understanding usually arrives slowly during moments of reflection when distractions disappear and there is nowhere left to escape from their own thoughts. It is not only about missing someone on the surface, it is about finally seeing the choices that were made, the fear that controlled those choices, and the missed opportunity to truly value a genuine emotional connection that existed. That understanding does not come quickly. It builds slowly over time, becoming stronger with every moment of honesty they allow themselves to face. And once they fully see it, it remains with them, shaping the way they move through life and influencing how they understand what truly matters emotionally. Comment real if this message touched something deep inside you and awakened emotions you thought had disappeared long ago. This kind of regret becomes powerful because it forces a person to confront accountability, humility, and true inner growth that cannot be avoided forever. It does not allow easy escape or endless distraction. Instead, it asks them to look directly at their own actions and the emotional impact those choices had on someone else. At the same time, growth is never happening on only one side. During this journey, while one person is learning to face fear, accept responsibility, and understand emotional truth more clearly, the other person is also evolving in strength and awareness. They are learning how to create stronger boundaries to protect their peace and how to value their own self-respect more deeply than before, even if that means creating distance for a period of time. This creates a situation where both individuals continue growing, sometimes at different speeds, yet still moving in similar emotional directions internally over the months and years. By the time one person finally gains clarity, the other may already have developed greater emotional strength, self-awareness, and wisdom through their own experiences. This change ensures that any future interaction, if it ever happens, is no longer based on emotional confusion, emotional dependency, or uncertainty. Instead, it becomes rooted in conscious choice, emotional maturity, honesty, and self-awareness. The dynamic shifts completely because both people are no longer emotionally standing in the same place they once were, even if the memory of that connection still quietly exists inside them. Even when someone appears to move forward outwardly, parts of their emotional world can remain connected to something that was never fully understood, emotionally resolved, or honestly faced completely.